Welcome to today's deep dive. We are thrilled you're joining us because our mission today is to unpack a fascinating and honestly like a somewhat sci-fi sounding new initiative in higher education.
It really does sound like science fiction at first glance.
Right. So we are looking at a stack of internal documents from a company called EON AI Ventures. We've got an enterprise pitch deck, a draft press release, and several strategic white papers detailing their new BME program.
Yeah, and the ultimate goal of this program, to essentially clone a university's most valuable resource, its professors.
Which is wild.
It is an incredibly bold proposition. And, we should establish right up front that Eon Reality, the operating partner here, isn't some fly-by-night startup throwing around AI buzzwords.
Yeah, that's an important context.
They have a 25-year history in immersive learning, and they already work with thousands of institutions globally. So when they propose taking real, living faculty members and transforming them into 2047 conversational AI personas, they are doing it with serious infrastructural backing.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because usually when we see universities reacting to AI, it's totally defensive, right?
Absolutely. It's all bans and restrictions.
Exactly. It's issuing policy statements about, like, not using language models to write term papers or running seminars on how to catch AI cheating. But EON is taking the complete opposite approach here.
They are leaning all the way in.
They really are.
Right.
But to understand why we even need this, I want you to picture the classic university experience. There is almost always this one very specific image that comes to mind, right? It's the massive, steeply raked lecture hall.
The classic amphitheater.
Right. You're sitting there with maybe 300 other students,
Yeah.
and way down at the front, standing at a podium, is a brilliant professor. Is a very romanticized image of prestige.
It is. But if you look at the mechanics of that room, what you are actually seeing is a massive structural bottleneck. Yeah. We romanticize the university lecture, but fundamentally, it is a system defined by extreme scarcity. The knowledge is completely centralized at the bottom of the room, and getting access to it is severely constrained by the expert's time.
And that is exactly what the statistics in this EON and pitch deck lay bare. I mean, the numbers are, frankly, a little jarring when you see them on paper.
They really frame the problem. If you look at a typical upper division undergraduate course, the faculty-to-student ratio is frequently 1 to 300.
Wow.
You have one highly specialized human brain and 300 students who need direct access to it to pass the class. And historically, the only mechanism we have to bridge that gap is office hours.
Which is where the entire system just falls apart. I mean, think about the logistics. The deck notes that a typical professor offers maybe 2 hours of open office hours a week.
Right.
It is mathematically impossible to funnel 300 students through a 2-hour window. The documents indicate that less than 10% of students actually get to attend office hours in a given semester.
Less than 10%.
Less than 10%. So if you're the student, the reality of your learning experience is mostly isolated.
Yeah, what's fascinating here is how the documents quantify this isolation. They call it the time to competency gap.
Time to competency.
Right, it's that agonizing stretch of time between a student realizing they don't understand a concept and the moment they actually receive the clarification that leads to understanding. In our current system, that gap is entirely dictated by the clock and the professor's Outlook calendar.
Let's ground this for the listener. Imagine you're a student sitting in your dorm at 11 p.m. You are grinding through a weekly problem set. You hit problem 3, and you just hit a wall.
We've all been there.
Right. And you remember the professor saying something in class that afternoon that would help, like a specific framing or a hint, but you can't quite grasp it. So what are your actual options at 11 p.m.?
Well, without a technological intervention, your options are pretty bleak. I mean, you could email the professor and hope they reply by the next afternoon, which completely halts your momentum for like 15 hours.
Yeah, that's frustrating.
Or you could blindly search the textbook, hoping the exact clarification you need is explicitly written in a sidebar somewhere.
Or you do what most students do today. You just search the internet.
Exactly. You either get generic results from a forum, or you ask a standard, off-the-shelf language model.
But that generic AI doesn't know your specific course syllabus. It doesn't know your professor's grading rubrics.
No, not at all.
It might give you an answer that is technically true in a broad sense, but hallucinate a methodology that gets you a failing grade on this specific assignment.
Which is exactly what brings us to the BME solution. Instead of waiting until Tuesday at 2 p.m. for a 15-minute slot in a cramped office, you just open your laptop at 11 p.m.
Okay.
You engage with what EON calls a brainy coach persona. You type or say, "Professor, I'm stuck on problem 3. I misunderstood what you said about the relationship between these two variables today. Can you walk me through it?"
And you get an immediate response.
Immediate.
Yeah.
And it's not a generic chatbot.
So, explain the mechanism here. Because if I just upload a PDF of a syllabus to a standard AI, it still sounds like a robot reading a PDF. The pitch deck claims they are capturing the professor's tacit professional knowledge.
Yeah, that's the key
How
phrase.
do they actually do that? You can't just plug a USB drive into a tenured professor's ear.
It is a rigorous process. EON puts the participating faculty member through a structured 25 to 40-hour engagement. Phase 1 is the explicit knowledge.
Like the syllabus and the readings?
Exactly. Ingesting the lectures, the specific reading materials, the past exams. But phase 2 targets the tacit knowledge you mentioned. They ingest years of the professor sent email chains to students, analyzing exactly how they answer recurring questions.
Oh, wow.
They might even run simulated interactions where the professor role plays with the AI, correcting its pedagogical approach in real time.
Oh, so it's learning their specific teaching philosophy. It learns that Professor Smith never just gives away the answer, right?
Mhm.
She always replies with a guiding question. Or it learns that Professor Jones always uses a specific metaphor about water pressure when explaining electrical circuits.
Exactly that. It maps their pedagogical framing. And they even capture the professor's actual voice, mapping the cadence and tone.
That is
So
wild.
when that student asks for help at 11 p.m., the response is delivered from the perspective, the knowledge base, and the literal voice of the person grading their final exam.
I love the analogy to think about this. It's the difference between asking a random stranger on the street for directions versus having the actual city planner sitting in the passenger seat with you, looking at the same map.
That's a great way to put it.
The generic AI is the stranger. The brainy coach is the city planner. There is a single sentence in this EON pitch deck that completely nails the value proposition for me. It says, office hours don't scale. Genius does.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is fundamentally about democratizing the aha moment.
The aha moment. I like that.
Right, those breakthroughs where a complex, thorny concept finally clicks because an expert explained it to you in just the right way. Those historically only happen behind closed doors for the lucky 10% of students who can physically make it to office hours.
Yeah.
Media is attempting to take that precise, high-value interaction and distribute it equitably to every single enrolled student without rationing it by time.
Okay, that sounds incredibly powerful for academic support. I mean,
Yeah.
the benefit to the student is obvious, but I want to put on my university chancellor hat for a second.
Okay, let's hear it.
We need to look at the massive blind spot here. Having my professor's voices available 24/7 as an AI sounds like an absolute liability nightmare. Like, let's say a student is interacting with this persona at 2 a.m., but they aren't asking about thermodynamics.
Right, they're asking something personal.
Let's say they are in a severe mental health crisis, or they are actively trying to manipulate the AI to cheat. If an AI gives unauthorized, damaging mental health advice in a professor's voice, the institution isn't just going to look bad. They're going to get sued into oblivion.
Oh, completely. That is the most critical hurdle for enterprise adoption, and the documents show EON anticipates it entirely.
Okay. How so?
Well, if you deploy an AI in a high-stakes environment like a university, it cannot just be optimized to be helpful. Helpfulness can actually be dangerous.
Huh. That makes sense.
EON addresses this liability through a fascinating piece of architecture they call the hard escalation guard layer.
Break that down for me, because I am skeptical. If they just wrote a prompt telling the AI, hey, be safe and don't give medical advice, we already know that doesn't work.
Right, it fails all the time.
Students are incredibly clever. They can jailbreak an AI with the right hypothetical phrasing in about 5 minutes.
You are hitting on the exact difference between a probabilistic safeguard and a deterministic one.
Okay, what's the difference?
Standard large language models are probabilistic. They guess the next most likely word. If you just put safety instructions in the prompt, you are hoping the model probabilistically decides to follow the rules.
Right, and a clever student can talk it out of those rules.
Exactly. But the hard escalation guard layer is deterministic. It sits entirely outside the conversational AI model.
So how does it actually function mechanically then?
Think of it like a subway turnstile, rather than a security guard you can argue with.
Oh, I like that.
Before the student's message even reaches the professor's AI persona, it has to pass through this microservice. This layer scans the semantic intent and the keywords of the prompt.
Okay.
If it detects a predefined urgent risk category, say, Keywords related to self-harm, severe emotional distress, or blatant academic integrity violations like write my essay, the turnstile
Yeah,
locks.
so the AI persona doesn't even get the chance to hallucinate a bad response because it never even sees the prompt.
Precisely. The deterministic layer intercepts it, and it doesn't just block the student, it executes a graceful, hard-coded redirection.
What does it redirect them to?
It steps out of the professor persona entirely and provides the student with immediate human professional support links, like the 24-hour campus counseling center hotline or the academic advising office.
The white paper refers to this as enforcing persona scope discipline. I find that term really clarifying.
It really is.
The AI knows its rigid boundaries. It knows it is an expert in medieval history, not a licensed clinical therapist. By forcing that scope discipline, it prioritizes the student's safety over the underlying programming to just be a helpful conversationalist.
And crucially, for your hypothetical university chancellor, it protects the institution's ethical and legal standards. It also ensures compliance with data handling laws like FERPA in the US.
Right, student privacy.
Because this deterministic layer and the AI are operating entirely within the institution's secure framework, none of these sensitive late-night conversations are being scraped and sent to Silicon Valley to train future public AI models. The student's data is totally walled off.
Okay, so I am convinced on the student side, they get 247 personalized support. And I see how the institution protects itself with the turnstile of the hard escalation guard layer. But let's look at the third pillar here, which might be the most difficult to convince. The professors themselves.
Yes, the faculty.
If I walk into the office of a tenured faculty member who spent 30 years building their expertise, and I tell them, hey, we want to download your brain, capture your voice, and run an AI version of you while you sleep, their immediate reaction is going to be hostility.
Oh, 100%.
They are going to ask, am I training my own replacement?
The faculty replacement objection. It is the single most predictable critique of this technology. But what's interesting in the strategic white papers is that EON doesn't try to bury this concern. They tackle it head on.
How do they pitch it to them?
Their core argument is that the BME system handles the high-volume, low-complexity interactions. It answers the routine clarifications. The 10th time in a week, a student asks how a specific formula works or when a deadline is.
The administrative and repetitive friction of teaching.
Yes. And by offloading that friction to the brainy coach, the professor suddenly reclaims hours of their week. They can reserve their actual limited human presence for high-value pedagogical work. Things like complex graduate advising, running a lab, conducting original research, or facilitating a nuanced, messy debate in a live seminar.
Things in AI simply cannot replicate.
Exactly.
I understand the philosophical argument that it frees up their time, but professors aren't going to just trust a philosophical argument. They're going to want legal protections for their intellectual property. How do they ensure the university doesn't just own a digital clone of them forever?
This is where EON has built some very strict contractual guardrails. They outline these non-negotiable protections in a framework called the Subject-Expert Identity and Knowledge Release.
Okay.
First and foremost, participation is strictly voluntary at the individual level. A university chancellor can buy the enterprise license, but they cannot compel a single professor to participate.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because volunteering is just step one. I was reading through the review rights in that release document. A faculty member must review and explicitly approve the fully built persona before any student is granted access.
Yep, it's a hard requirement.
If they test it and feel the AI is being too lenient in its grading feedback, or if it explains a foundational concept in a way they disagree with, they mandate changes. It does not go live without their sign-off.
And they maintain ongoing control, too. What if they approve it, but halfway through the semester they decide they are uncomfortable with the whole concept?
That was my exact question. What if they just hate it in practice?
The documents outline what is essentially the ultimate veto power. A participating professor can withdraw their consent at any time for any reason with zero institutional penalty.
Wow, anytime.
Anytime. If they pull that ripcord, the persona is permanently deactivated within 7 days. They also hold veto power over any commercial endorsements or objectionable statements the persona might theoretically be manipulated into making.
It is essentially retaining the absolute copyright to your own digital soul. You are licensing an interactive version of your expertise, but you hold the keys and you can change the locks whenever you want.
That's a great way to summarize it.
But speaking of licensing, let's talk about the money. because academia relies on a lot of unpaid labor, and asking a professor to spend 40 hours training an AI model of themselves sounds like a massive uncompensated lift.
Yeah, the financial model EON proposes is clearly designed to overcome that exact hesitation. It aligns the financial incentives across all three parties.
Okay, how does the split work?
So EON takes 50% of the licensing revenue to cover the massive upfront costs of development, cloud infrastructure, and running those deterministic safety operations. The university takes 40% to support broad academic affairs,
Right.
but the participating faculty members receive a direct 10% share of the revenue their specific persona generates.
I am naturally skeptical of revenue shares, but let's explore that. 10% might not sound huge initially, but we are talking about institutional enterprise licensing.
Exactly, and it actively rewards pedagogical excellence. Think about the dynamics here.
Okay.
If a professor puts the effort in during that 40-hour capture process to truly imbue the AI with their tacit knowledge, their brainy coach persona becomes incredibly valuable. If hundreds of students are constantly engaging with it because it is genuinely helpful at 11 p.m.,
Then that professor sees a quarterly distribution tied to that high usage.
precisely.
So what does this all mean for the faculty? It turns their teaching expertise into a scalable, revenue-generating asset for themselves. They do the capture work once, and then it generates passive income while they maintain total control over the off switch.
It completely flips the anxiety narrative. The fear is always that AI is a tool designed to devalue human expertise by automating it away.
Right, the replacement fear.
But this model attempts to use AI to elevate the expert. It extends their reach beyond the physical lecture hall, it protects their time, and it directly compensates them for the specific value of their unique knowledge.
We have covered a massive amount of ground here today. Let's synthesize this deep dive. The mission of the BME program, looking at all these sources, really boils down to a compelling triad of benefits.
Okay, let's hear the triad.
First, you have the students who finally get equitable, 247 personalized academic support from the best version of their actual professor. It aims to entirely eliminate the bottleneck of limited office hours.
Right.
Second, you have the institution, which gets to offer this futuristic support, but is protected by robust guardrails like the hard escalation guard layer, ensuring sensitive crises are handled by humans, not algorithms.
Exactly.
And third, you have the faculty, who are protected by strict, voluntary consent frameworks, the ability to pull the plug at any time, and a revenue-sharing model that pays them for their genius.
This raises an important question, though.
What's that?
Everything we've discussed sounds great on a white paper, but is this just theoretical tech utopianism, or is this actually happening?
Oh, right.
The press release drafts show that EON is moving from theory to practice right now. The launch program is structured as a 3-faculty pilot over a single semester. Phase 0 is selection. Phase 1 is the capture process we detailed.
Phase 2 is the rigorous faculty review.
Yes. And Phase 3 is a live semester with real students generating real usage data. Institutions are actively evaluating this pipeline today.
It isn't science fiction slated for a decade from now. It is being piloted this semester.
Oh!
Which leaves me with one final fascinating thread. I pulled this from a single standalone word in the enterprise pitch deck:
Okay, what's the word?
legacy. In the section listing the benefits for the faculty member, they list reach, they list earn, they list control. But the fourth word is legacy. The deck notes that BME preserves decades of knowledge in a form that students can engage with long after a single semester ends.
Wow.
I want you listening to this to ponder something. What happens when a legendary, universally beloved professor retires? Or, to take it a step further, what happens when they pass away?
Oh, that's heavy.
If they legally consented to keep their persona active, future generations of students could literally be mentored by the greatest academic minds long after those minds have left the physical classroom. Is the future of the university an immortal faculty?
That is an incredible thought.
We started this deep dive by picturing that crowded, steeply raked lecture hall with the brilliant professor standing so far away at the podium, bottlenecked by the constraints of time. Imagine a world where that professor can sit next to every single student at exactly the moment they are needed, forever.
It's a completely new paradigm.
That is our deep dive for today. Thank you so much for joining us, and keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep learning about the world around you.